Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So we see that in Nahum 3, it helps us understand the first three churches, trumpets, bowls, what have you, that I've gone over, right? And seals. Okay. So we see that the third seal, there's a black horse. The rider has a pair of scales. The trumpet's blown, a star ablaze goes on the rivers and springs of water, and it's called wormwood, and 1/3 of the waters turn bitter, many people die. The bowls on the rivers and springs, they turn to blood, and so they are given blood to drink. Now, why is this happening? We saw it back in Nahum 2:8. Nineveh is like a pool whose water is draining away. Stop, stop, they cry, but no one turns back. As Babylon's system, Neo-Roman system, takes over the world, right? Because Baal is this Mesopotamian Babylonian deity. Baal and Nebo, there's connections with Jupiter and Athena and these Greco-Roman deities and Apollo, these Greek deities who are expressed in Rome as well. Okay, deities of science, right? Tree of knowledge, okay? And Baal, the bully, some kind of arrogant kind of leader pushing people around, not necessarily shaped like a big guy. Maybe he's a short Jew, maybe he's a tall Englishman, okay? But there's different forms of that same idea of someone arrogant in their extreme lack of humility saying, I insist on being in charge, thank you. Right, however they would say it from their various groups. You see what I'm saying? That's what that is. That's not God's spirit. That's the spirit of a bully. That's the spirit of what I used to call the bull that attempts to cover the light. Okay, so they can have some kind of gay guys doing some kind of opera, ballerina, ballet kind of presentation and dressed up like fairy angels and with their kind of rainbow hair, and then some white supremacists trying to get everyone else to seem more like them than they are, and then say, well, it's actually us because everyone else is sold out to the LGBT, and it does not work that way. I'm sure you all know that by far. Okay, Nahum 3. That's not going to get them to the kingdom of heaven. They have to obey God through me, and that just infuriates God. I'm sure that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so before we get into Nahum 3, actually, let's briefly touch on Micah 1:7. All her idols will be broken to pieces. All her temple gifts will be burned with fire. I will destroy all her images, since she gathered her gifts from the wages of prostitutes. As the wages of prostitutes, they will again be used. Okay, so it says, if you act like a whore who mocks God, you have the fate of a whore that mocks God. If you yoke yourself to them instead of obeying God through me, that's what happens. So let's get to this Nahum 3, shall we? Woe to the city of blood, full of lies, full of plunder, never without victims, the crack of whips, the clatter of wheels, galloping horses and jolting chariots, charging cavalry, flashing swords and glittering spears. Notice here how they went in over the flashing items, right? There's a flashing sword, there's glittering spears. In Nahum 2, okay, the metal in the chariots were said to be flashing in verse 3. Okay, and the spears brandished, and the chariots stormed through the streets. Storm, right? The storm of the Lord, right? Going back and forth, looking like flaming torches. They dart like lightning. So they dart like lightning. Here in Nahum 3, we see it says flashing swords, lightning flashes, right? And glittering spears. Now listen what happens next, because some of you are like, I'm not quite convinced. I think you just kind of cherry picked. No, listen carefully. Nahum is perhaps the most important book to understand Revelation. When I first started going over it, I thought it might have been Isaiah, because I saw a lot of things click there. I thought it might be Jeremiah. Jeremiah is full of stuff, but Nahum kind of it's short and sweet, gets to the point. It really does a good job. So anyway, charging cavalry, flashing swords and glittering spears, many casualties, piles of dead, bodies without number, people stumbling over corpses, right? Corpses, right? The body without the spirit is dead. Faith without works is dead. Those who aren't doing the works of God, right? All because the wanton lust of a prostitute, alluring, the mistress of sorceries, who enslaved nations by her prostitution and peoples by her witchcraft. Now listen carefully. A lot of you, I'll go as far as say all of you have this wrong. If you're not obeying God through me, which none of you are at this point, you'll have it wrong. Isaiah 57, it says the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. And he says, who stays behind? Those who are the offspring spiritually, literally, what have you, of a sorceress, of a prostitute. They're both named in Isaiah 57. So it says the point is to be taken away, right? Two people will be in a field, one will be taken, one will be left. That's what Christ said is a character in the story in the New Testament. So you want to be removed, right? Some people say rapture, but it confuses it, right? Rapture is a play on words for rape root, and we look at that, how they explain it. They're basically just rapists who use psychology, which is the main form of sorcery, psychology, technology, chemistry, what have you, right? Pharmakeia, right? Poisoning, sorcery, pharmaceuticals, and mental health, right? And what have you. And of course, I'm not saying that if you're batshit crazy, that you shouldn't try to get help of some kind. You should try to get help, but you should take it with a grain of salt when it's coming from mental health, because they're eugenicists, they're mass murderers. They are completely yoked to the state, right? It's stupid not to understand that. That's like, you're a Jew who's on the run in Nazi Germany, and you start feeling like you're depressed, or you start hearing voices or whatever. And then they're like, well, go back to the Nazis so you can go to psychiatrists, right? You got to take that, you got to say, no, what the hell, right? You got to wonder what you're better off with. So that's absolutely should be considered. Okay. And who, what, when, where, how, why. If you have any questions about that, ask me. Okay. I'm against you, declares the Lord Almighty. I will lift your skirts over your face. I will show the nations your nakedness and the kingdoms your shame. I will pelt you with filth. I will treat you with contempt and make you a spectacle. Now, obviously, God is not talking about him doing himself, right? He's going to allow scumbags to abuse him. Okay. And of course, some of these people do disgusting sexual acts and so on and so forth, and there's strong parallels there. All who see you will flee from you and say, Nineveh is in ruins. Who will mourn for her? Where can I find anyone to comfort you? Now listen carefully. This is where a lot of people, you see at this point, racist Jews will run out the room crying and say, fuck you! Okay, I don't want them to see it that way, and act like some little girl, right? And anyone else who's a racist. Maybe some black guy who doesn't want people to think of it in terms of a great black warrior. I mean, they're out there somewhere, I'd imagine. Okay, and whoever else. So Nahum 3 verse 8 says, look, stop looking to betas. It's a martial art order. It says, are you better than Thebes, situated on the Nile, with water around her? The river was her defense, the waters her wall. Cush and Egypt were her boundless strength. Put in Libya were among her allies. So why did they say put in Libya were her boundless strength? Why did they say Cush and Egypt? And of course, Libya, you have the Berbers, and you have this more associated with these wider races, right? Indo-Europeans, what have you. And Arabs eventually. Okay? And there was black people there, I'm sure. But when it comes to being more black, Cush and Egypt were considered the blackest of the black in the ancient known world, right? So these people didn't know much about West Africa or South Africa, but they kind of understood Sudan and Ethiopia and Tanzania a little bit, I'd imagine, and certainly Egypt and so on and so forth, and Libya and what have you. Okay. Yes, she was taken captive and went into exile. Her infants were dashed to pieces at every street corner. Lots were cast for her nobles, and all her great men were put in chains. So again, I'm not racist. It's like saying, just because you're black doesn't mean you get a pass. You don't. You have to obey God through me. So it's saying that, are you better than these great black warriors who are related to Nimrod? Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod. Nimrod founded Babylon. So here's this Babylonian spirit coming to crush Nineveh, and they're trying to reason with them, right? And it's saying, are you greater than Ham, right? It said, repent, be a righteous person, gather your strength and do what's right to the best of your ability. So even if you're going to go to hell anyway, you're better off doing that. It said, are you better than these African falcon top martial artists? No. And of course, this is well after Egypt, 3200, where Horus, the falcon martial art order, has been established as the top martial arts order on the top planet, on the whole planet. Okay? This is well after that. So people somewhere in a remote area far away can't claim that. It's in the pressure cooker where you compete with other people. No one had a viable counter-argument. It was Horus martial arts, right? It's Royal African Falcon martial arts. And that's part of what went into founding Babylon. So Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod. Nimrod founded Babylon when? After the Royal African Falcon martial art order was established already in that area as supreme. Okay. You too will become drunk, and you will go into hiding and seek refuge from the enemy. So it says, look, just like say it like a drunken black guy, but drunk really with guilt, drunk with the blood of the saints, drunk with ill-gotten gains, drunk with stupidity, drunk with chasing foolishness, drunk with chasing cheap women and evil rich women, and so on and so forth. Drunk with filth, right? With the blood of the saints, with the wrath of God being poured into it. In there also contains the wrath of God, right? All your fortresses are like fig trees with their first ripe fruit. When they are shaken, the figs will fall into the mouth of the eater. Look at your troops. They are all weaklings. Why does it bother to say, look at your troops, right? Mind, body, soul, and spirit. They're punks. They're sissies, namby-pambies, pushovers, right? They don't have heart. Why is this being brought up? Because the Bible says the Lord weighs the heart. The Lord weighs the motives. As water reflects the face of one's life, reflects the heart. The motives, what you've done, who you are, who you really are to your very core, the core of your soul. So look at your troops. They're all weaklings. The gates of your land are wide open. The people are supposed to lead them, right? They're supposed to be the gates of God, but they're just the gates to hell. And hell is coming in to destroy them. To your enemies, fire has consumed the bars of your gates. Draw water for the siege. We'll have to get into this later amount of time, but it says, strengthen your defenses, so on and so forth.